This video contains spoilers on version 5.0, including the Archon Quests, as well as some world quests. Full list in the description. Natlan is finally here, and as expected, it arrived carrying a gigantic bag filled with lore and shrouded revelations. In this video, we will talk about how the people of Natlan gained the ability to manipulate Phlogiston, the cause and the consequences of the precarious condition of Natlan's ley lines, a time when humans coexisted with the Pyro dragon sovereign and the ascension of the first Pyro archon. As usual, I will provide timestamps for your ease of navigation, and I will pin a comment listing any corrections or updates after this goes live. And as always, I can only offer the picture that makes the most sense to me at the time, and even though I will base everything on released material, there will be inevitably some interpretation and speculation on my part. Without further delay, please grab your drink of choice, make yourselves comfortable, and let's dive straight in. Let's begin today's journey talking about Phlogiston. Saurians and most people from modern Natlan are able to use Phlogiston, with the exception of some who have been tainted by the Abyss. But this was not always so. In ancient times, the power to control Phlogiston belonged to dragonkind alone. One of the ways they would exert this control was over a kind of language that we know as iridescent inscriptions, which we can still find today in this form, appearing as golden, shining patterns. Later, humans would develop their own language for the same purpose, and this man-made variant is known as Phlogiston engravings. The control over Phlogiston is what gives birth to most of Natlan's region-specific game mechanics. But before the people of Natlan could achieve this power had to be taken for humanity from the dragons. And the person who performed this feat is known as Waxaklahun Ubah Kan, the Sage of the Stolen Flame. The Sage of the Stolen Flame, who even has an island to his name, is probably one of the most important historical figures in Natlan. And while most people seem to believe this sage was human, those of us who have passed his trial and retrieved the first of 2 golden entreaties know that this sage was instead a silver dragon. In a way, we could say that one of the greatest heroes for humankind, it seems, was one of the greatest traitors for dragonkind. But this sage saw in humanity the potential for a brighter future for Saurians, the dragon's descendants, and so he formed an alliance with Xbalanque, who would become the first Pyro archon. But in order for this human to ascend, the Pyro dragon sovereign would first have to be defeated. The Pyro dragon sovereign was known in Natlan by the name of Xiuhcoatl. During the trial prepared by the Sage of the Stolen Flame, we have a vision that describes him as follows.
You witness, with your own eyes, the gargantuan wings from beyond the world, the once glorious and grand figure now pitiable, having completely sunk into the terrifying shadow.
This is not the description of a dragon sovereign in his purest form. This is the description of a dragon infested by the Abyss. And that takes us to the heart of today's topic. With the dragon sovereign described as having sunk into the darkness, I cannot help but think of Apep's words.
The Dragon King acquired the power of darkness from outside of this world, and led us in a fight against the order established by the outsiders. An unimaginable war took place into that, causing destruction on an unprecedented scale.
So the Dragon King acquired the power of darkness, and the dragon in our vision had completely sunk into the shadow. So far, my working hypothesis had been that the Dragon King was distinct and above the 7 sovereigns. But the phrasing, the gargantuan wings from beyond the world, and the description of this dragon make me think it is possible that the corrupted Pyro dragon sovereign and the Dragon King are one and the same. It could of course be more complicated than that. Nibelung could have transferred abyssal power to Xiuhcoatl instead, but appealing to Occam's razor, I will stick to this first interpretation for now. From a storytelling perspective, it makes sense to me that the Dragon King, if one of the 7 sovereigns, would be the Pyro dragon, ruling over the land where the civilization of dragons was located. Not only that, but to me it also makes the entire timeline suddenly make sense again. What follows next is my interpretation of what happened. As a quick refresher, we know that there were at least 2 great wars for Tevat. The first, when the Primordial One fought against the dragons with his 4 shining shades. In this war, the dragons were defeated, and the Primordial One established the human realm where the first unified human civilization would thrive. Then there was the second war, which brought the world to the verge of destruction. This war, described by Nuvilet as the War of Vengeance, was the time during which Enkanomiya sunk into the Dark Seas. In all likelihood, this was the return of Nibelung having obtained the power of the Abyss. And everything seems to suggest that a crucial target in this war was the Irminsul network. Had the dragons succeeded in destroying this network with the power of the Abyss, the human realm would probably have disintegrated, as Irminsul seems to be a foundational pillar of the realm. I have a video about this should you be interested. In a desperate measure to stop this, the heavenly principles were forced to send down celestial nails, regardless of the collateral damage they caused. Close to every celestial nail we have encountered so far, we can also find Irminsul roots poking out of the ground. And I would certainly not be surprised if we find a celestial pillar in or close to the Night Kingdom. Hi there, it's me from the future. As I am reworking the audio for this video, some viewers have brought to my attention that there is indeed a celestial nail that can be seen in the Night Kingdom. So yeah, that fits. Because everything seems to indicate that the worst damage of all was done in Natlan. Wielding abyssal power, the Pyro dragon brought destruction to the Irminsul network, as also described in the visions we have during Waxaklahun Ubah Kan's trial.
The pitch-black flames scorched the land, and even the white tree nearly withered, and the final envoy's glow shattered and smashed, only able to subsist on the last leaves of the severed roots.
The pitch-black flames are probably the dragon's abyss-infused power. This power nearly destroyed the white tree, which can represent Irminsul as a whole, or at least a considerable portion of its roots. This attack was probably the closest the dragons ever came to reclaiming the world, or at least destroying the realm as created by the Primordial One. Regardless, even though the dragons in the end did not completely win this war, I believe they did achieve a partial win. I think Xiuhcoatl was able to regain the authority over Pyro during this war, the control over the Celestial Throne, that same kind of authority that Focalors returned to Nuvilet. And my reasoning for this hypothesis is simple. It would explain why a human was able to become an Archon, not in the way the Archon gods of other nations ascended to that status, but by defeating and killing the dragon sovereign who had reclaimed this authority, therefore conquering this position of power by force.
You see a giant dragon with pupils pierced, and a tiny human falling together from great height, while the world echoes with a sorrowful song, one composed of the agony of dragonkind. You see a man rising from the dead dragon's heart once more, his whole body seemingly wreathed in flame.
This is how Xbalanque ascended to Archonhood, and then used his newly gained power to create the rules for Natlan that would allow humanity to maintain this position within their ranks. I will leave you with 2 final thoughts, but there is a lot more I want to cover, and I will try to upload another video soon as a sort of continuation for this one, where I want to explore the Night Kingdom, Natlan's rules, ancient names, and the Oath of Resurrection. As a teaser of sorts, the fact that the ley lines suffered so much damage in Natlan makes me think that the Night Kingdom probably arose sort of in the space left behind. And finally, I just have to put this out there. If part of Natlan's main problem is its lack of ley lines, and if rebuilding the missing ley lines could be part of a solution, wouldn't it be great if there was someone who could, I don't know, weave new ley lines? Someone who had a tool that cannot be used to extend or replace existing ley lines, only weave new ones? But for now, thank you kindly for the view, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one.